Good afternoon, everyone. So this is our syllabus. We already covered understanding requirement modeling, then principles that guide practicing is discussing now. In that part, already discussed the core principles. Then now we are discussing principles that guide framework activities. So in the core principles, we discussed the general principles. Then come to this framework activity. All the framework activity principles we discussed. What are the different framework activities? Planning, communication. First, communication, planning, modeling. Construction, deployment are the different activities, different framework activities. So respective of the project size, these are the framework activities. So when we discussed this framework activity, the principles for communication principles that I discussed, planning principles discussed, modeling principles discussed, requirement modeling principles discussed, design modeling principles discussed, and agile modeling principles. Do you remember? Do you remember those principles? At least, okay, if you don't remember the principles, do you remember that I discussed?
Yes, ma'am.
So next is construction principles. What is construction principle? What do you mean by principles? The principles are some guidelines which you need to follow when you are doing that particular framework activity. So when communication principle means when you are doing communication means when you are interacting with stakeholders at the time, you have to follow some principles and guidelines for effective communication. When it comes to planning, for an effective planning, you have to follow some guidelines. So those guidelines only we discuss that we call principles. So next is construction principle. Construction principles means, what do you mean by construction? Construction of software means software development, last part. Development means all this planning phase onward, means before planning, communication phase onwards, we are calling as development. We start the development from communication phase. Now, what is construction? Construction means writing. You start to write the coding part. Coding, and always coding is accompanying with testing part. So coding and testing is not only in the construction part. It's starts from initial phase onwards, but always this testing is at least if you are doing less test, you have to do that after the coding. So that is that testing is mandatory. That's why when you are drawing the diagrams, you have to include the testing as part of coding. So the construction activity containing coding and testing task. So you need to follow some coding principles. Coding principles are for every different types of programming styles are there. So for every language has its own principles. So you have to follow the programming language principles, programming methods. The structural programming is one method. unstructured programming is the procedural programming is object-oriented. Whatever type of programming methodology you still have to follow the principles related to that. Then when it comes to testing actually we are using to uncover the errors, right? So there may be some errors. You can disclose those errors during the testing phase. Suppose if you find out some errors, you should minimize it. So while testing time also we have to follow some testing principles. So before you start the actual coding, you can go for, you have to follow the preparation principles. The preparation principles are actually, this is a starting of coding phase. So before you start write the code, you have to understand the problem. So then you have to understand what are the principles and concepts I need to follow. What are the basic principles you need to follow that you should understand. Then after that, you can pick a particular programming language which is suitable for your software development, and you can select the proper environment, programming environment. You can choose the platform and tools, which one is comfortable and which one is most fit for your programming or software development. You can choose the best one. So you have to, before you select this programming language and environment, you have to understand the problem you're going to solve, and you can select the design principles and concepts also. You need to understand those things. Then you can start your program writing, and after that you have to go for unit testing and other type of module integrated type of testings. So you need to create a test case before you start your testing. You have to create a test case which contain all the input and expected output. Then when coding principles, as you begin writing code, the principles will slightly change. That is, you can use the pair programming if you want. What is pair programming? Pair programming means you are doing the programming in pair. In pair means generally we are habituated to write a code by our own, but instead of writing a code by your own, you can take the help of your colleague or your friend. Both of them can together write a programming code. It's generally it's like how can you write a program together? Means suppose if you want to take help from someone, it's not throughout the program, throughout the software. Suppose if you want to take for a particular module, you can take help of your friend, and that is he will act as a navigator. Like when you are driving a car, you are the driver, and this Google Maps is navigator, right? It will guide you. Suppose if you are going to the wrong route, it will inform you. The same way, one can act as a driver, and another can act as a navigator, and you can change the road according to your comfortability. And there is no particular rule like you have to choose this person and you have to continue with this for this particular time. It doesn't matter. Wherever you're comfortable, you can use that programming. Pair programming. Otherwise, if you're not comfortable with the second person, you can avoid that. Once you adapt this pair programming, it's no need to take the help throughout the program development, because the reason is sometimes people are not comfortable to work in pair. Means the one who are near to you or the navigator is always guiding. Some people don't like that guiding part. Like a backseat driver, he's not doing the work, but he's guiding you always. But some people that's what won't like and comfortable in work in that environment. So the main thing, if you want to go for pair programming, is collaboration. If you are very much happy with the person, do it in a very effective way, effective manner. Otherwise, it's a headache. So you can consider the use of pair programming if you need. Then select the data structure would meet the needs of the design. Different types of data structures you learn. Can you mention some data structures? Can you mention some data structures you learned before? Anybody is there?
Yes, ma'am. Stacks, queues, trees, binary search tree.
Yes, stack, queue, linked list, and graph trees all are data structures. So you can choose the best suitable for your application. And you have to understand the software architecture, and you can create the interfaces which you need, and you can go for keep conditional logic as simple as possible. Always try to make it as simple as possible. Actually, making simplicity is the most difficult task. Making things simple is most difficult task. So try to make as simple as possible. And if nested libs if you are using in your program, you make it testable and make it modified and understandable, because there are some programming structure. You need to follow that structure, particular structure. You can identify the nested programming loops easily, and if there is any error, you can easily find out the error if you follow the particular structure. And when you mention the variable names, try to use the meaningful variable names, which is very related to the which related to your context. You can use X, Y, Z, all are variable names. You can assign some values, but instead of using those values when it comes to a programming language, it's better to mention variable name which is very much logically related. Means if it is related to a student file, you have to use the student name, roll number, that type of variables you are using instead of X, Y, Z. So it will be readable, it will be understandable. For future reference also it will be useful. And write code that is self-documenting. Self-documenting means that I can use the comments. When you write the code, what is a particular module says, okay, that you can write reference. It will be helpful, and for the next team, when you hand over the product to another team, those people also, this commenting section will be very helpful to understand what it is. Next, you can create a visual layout. Visual layout means what do you mean? Visually, if it is very readable, it's very understandable. Okay. So indentation marks, blank lines that you can use to visually effective, means the layout become perfect, means you can easily understand. So like when you are writing some documents, when you're dividing in different paragraphs, is it necessary? It's not necessary. The functionality is same, but when you divide into different paragraphs, the document become more readable, more understandable. So in the same way, those you can use the same methods in programming also when you are developing a program. So first, I try to use the possibility of pair programming, and you can select the data structures. You can understand the system structure, software architecture, and make the logic as simple as possible. And if there is nested loop, make it structure, make it a meaningful way. Then it's more testable, more understandable, and you can use meaningful variable names, and try to do the comment section and give a visual layout. So next is validation principles. What do you mean by validation principle? Validation principle means, once you run your coding part, you can go for validation, validating the customer requirement, whether that one which you develop is actually satisfy all the customer needs. You have to make sure of that. So you can conduct a code walkthrough and appropriate and perform some unit tests. And if there is any errors you find, you have to correct the errors, whatever you are. You should not hide the errors. You can refactor the code. Refactoring means you can improve the, without changing the functionality, you can improve the code structure. That is called refactoring. So this comes under validation principles. Okay. Then testing principles. Once you now we already completed planning, design, modeling. Before planning, communication was there. Communication, planning, design, modeling, development, testing. Coding actually, preparation is there, development is there. So next is testing. Testing principles suggest all tests should be traceable to the customer requirement. What are the customer requirements when you need to? What are the functionality you have to satisfy for every single requirement? You have to write a test case. You should not forget to test any of the requirements. Test should be planned long before test begin. That's why we are going for test case preparation before the actual testing starts. Then the Pareto principle apply to software testing. Pareto principle means 20-80 principle rule, means everywhere, not only Pareto principle is very popular principle, not only for the testing. When it comes to testing, Pareto principle means 80% errors are coming from 20% programming code. So you have to focus on those 20%. That is called error prone areas. You can try to uncover those errors and try to clear those errors. Means you have to debug all the errors. To this 80% errors, you can clear from 20% module. So you should focus more. You have to write more test cases for those modules. So that principle you can apply here also. Then if 80% errors are removed, then 20% module means that is a great thing. So you can apply the Pareto principle here also. When it comes to road accident, the 80% road accidents happen by 20% people only. The remaining people are not making road accidents. So everywhere this minority people make more impact. So that minority is creating more impact. So that is 80-20 or Pareto principle. Then testing should begin in the small and progress towards testing in the large. Testing always starts with module testing and gradually it increases and integrating to a complete system. So it's progressing towards large. Then exhaustive testing is not possible. You have to stop at the probability of errors. You can test some module more and some module less. Can do the testing, but exhaustive testing is not recommended. Testing should be done. You have to create some test cases for each and every module, try to complete all the requirements and functionality, and you have to test according to that. But how can you stop the testing? Is it sufficient? The testing is sufficient? There's a question always. So try to find out maximum errors with minimum test. That is here about to. So exhaustive testing means it will waste your time. Next is deployment principles. What is deployment principle means? What is deployment? Deployment means you hand over the product to the customer after completing your product. So you have to match with the customer expectation. Customer is always expecting more than you offer. That is a customer psychology. So customer expectation for the software must be, you should be able to manage the customer expectation. That is the deployment principle. First, always initially you have a talk with your customer. Then you can convince in some stage you are negotiating with the customer, and you always try to convince this is what I'm going to give you. But the customer, even though he's agreed, finally he may expect something more than that, so that you can able to satisfy him. That is the first deployment principle. A complete delivery package should be assembled and tested. The delivery package means the last system what you created should be assembled and tested. The final test, then only tested okay. The last testing we will consider. Then a support regime must be established before the software is delivered. Means before you hand out the product to the customer, you have to create a maintenance team. Delivery also, you are responsible for the software for a period of time. So at the time you should be ready with your maintenance team. The maintenance team should be very much responsive and should give the accurate information on time whenever there is a problem arises. So that also customer satisfaction depends on after delivery service also, not only till delivery, after delivery service, how you are, the maintenance part also very, very important to satisfy the customer. So principle, another principle is appropriate instruction materials you need to give, means you have to provide documentation, enough manual, software manual you need to provide to the end user because he's not familiar with the software, how to work, how to use. For every hardware or software product, whatever the product you are delivering, like even for a mobile phone also, any hardware thing which you are buying for a home, for example, washing machine, fridge, whatever it is, even for ironing box also will get something with guarantee card, and some small advices will be there, do's and don'ts will be there, some suggestions will be there. Then when it comes to a complex software means you have to mention each and everything clearly, the troubleshooting things and everything. Some things, some troubleshooting part can do from the user side also. So those troubleshooting environment you have to mention, and all the test cases you can mention. Some additional documentation part you have to, and each and every part with the diagrams you have to clearly explain how it works. All the details should be given. That is called user manual. User manual we have to handle. Then buggy software should be fixed first, delivered later. So suppose if you are going to deliver something, deliver a product, then you're find out some bugs. So what you are thinking, oh, this is the last minute you find out the error, then it's better to deliver, otherwise I won't keep the deadline. But instead of keep the deadline, you should focus on fix your bugs first, and then you can at least, even though if you they postpone your delivery, and that also it's better to, it's instead of giving a faulty product on time, it's better to give a working product in late. That is the principle. Fifth. So these are the deployment principle. Customer expectation you should meet, and delivery packages should be assembled and tested at last. And then before the software is delivered, you should be ready with your maintenance team. Appropriate document instruction manual should be there, and you should not deliver a buggy product. Buggy product means a software with bugs. You have to clear, you have to fix it, and later you can deliver. So these are the deployment principles. So we completed the second module now. You can check your syllabus part. All the topics I covered, core principles, principles that guide the each framework activity. Actually, all this comes under this heading. And requirement engineering and all the phases, requirement gathering, analysis model, building analysis model, negotiating, requirement monitoring, validating, all comes under this part. Then requirement modeling. Modeling means scenario modeling, class-based modeling, functional and behavior modeling are there. Okay, all topics we covered. Actually, I discussed all the requirement modeling phases in detail. Do you have any doubts? You can ask me. Now, time is 4:32. I've shared the notes. Abhishek, are you there? Abhishek, are you there? Okay, then anyone, who is that other seer? Other than Abhishek, one more, two CRs are there, right? For every class, there, I think there are two CRs. Who is the other one? Anybody is there?
Yes, ma'am.
What's your name?
Sheshu Kiran.
You send me one. Do you have my number, or else you send your number in chat box?
Okay, ma'am.
I will share. Sheshu Kiran, have you got the module? Module PPT. Share in your group. Do you have SC syllabus with you? I think I shared before. go through the PPT once. If you have doubt, ask me. Do you have any doubt? Are you going through the PPT?
Yes, ma'am.
Numbers 5. Roll number 5.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
11. Absent 12. 14. Absent 18. Absent 21. Absent 23. Eleven. 11 is there. 12. 14. 18.
Yes, ma'am.
21. 23.
Yes, ma'am.
25. Absent 26. 29.
Present, ma'am.
31. 33.
Yes, ma'am. 31.
33.
Present, ma'am.
39,
Yes, ma'am.
40. 40 is absent. 41,
Yes, ma'am.
40, 47, absent. Yes. Vamshi. Your name is Vamshi, right? Okay. I'm collecting all absentees list. So other than these numbers, all are present. Roll number 40 is absent. 47 also absent.
48 present, ma'am.
40 is Vamshi, right? Where is he? He's not responding. "48,
Present, ma'am.
49, 49 is
Yes, ma'am.
51, 51 absent, 53,
Present, ma'am. Ma'am.
yes, 55, absent, 60, 55
ma'am.
is present, 60,
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am.
then yes,
25, ma'am.
where you went?
I changed my earphones, ma'am. That's just mic problem, so I changed my earphones.
Ma'am, pin number 12 present.
57, 57, Nikita, absent. So many people simply join.
Excuse me, ma'am.
And many people joined very late. At I got requests at 4:30. But can I allow?
Ma'am, I've been in the meeting. There was a power cut, so I switched to date on it.
Roll number 12. You join now.
No, I'm roll number 3.
I'm asking about roll number 12.
No, ma'am, I was from the start.
Then when I called, where you went?
Ma'am, I was having network issue, so I couldn't.
You people are simply logging to get the attendance and after that logging somewhere.
No, ma'am, I was having network issue, so
Everybody's having network issue when I'm calling. I'm not getting any responses. That's why I thought people are not there. I'm not asking questions. I'm asking some general thing. Where we stopped, what we completed, last portion, like that. I'm asking some simple general questions. I'm also not responding. So many people simply roll number 57 are there. Is there? Okay. "57, 12.
I'm 3 also.
Yeah. So it's not fair to join late. So I plan to start waiting room. Otherwise, people will join at last moment. Because when I take the timestamp, I noticed many people were there only for 10 minutes, 5 minutes. And getting the timestamp, how much time you are present during the session. 5 to 10 minutes only to get the attendance, they simply log in and after that they log out. So if waiting room is on, I can. Okay, if you have any doubt, I already shared the PPT.